I'm never going to get bored of that song, folks. Anyway, tonight we are going to be diving deep into, if this ever comes up, the Triangle of Sadness. And of course, trying to answer the question, is it actually a class-conscious film? Let me pull up my show notes. Let's see what's going on in the show notes. Bear with me. All right. Where's my log line? All right. Here we go. All right. Here's their rather spare but accurate log line. A fashion model celebrity couple joins a luxury cruise for the super rich. It was written and directed by Ruben Ostlund, and stars Harris Dickinson, Dolly DeLeon, Zlatko Buric, Iris Bourbon, Vicky Berlin, Henrik Dorsen, Jean-Christophe Foley, Amanda Walker, Oliver Ford Davies, Sunyi Melis, Woody Harrelson, and in her final performance before her untimely death, Charles B. Dean. Now let's get into the social nutrition checklist, folks. Would this earn a reframe stamp? No, it would not. Is it union made? I don't think it is. The best I could find, I don't believe it is. Would it get a, did it pass the Bechdel test? Absolutely it did. And is it a class-conscious film? That's kind of the question we're going to ask. And I kind of go back and forth over that line on this flick. So I can't give it a score just yet. But by the end of this show, we will get into it. Now, is there any historicity to deal with? No, of course not. It's a big allegory, a metaphor. History isn't quite, it's not purporting to be a historical event. So with that out of the way, I think it's time to bring on my co-host with the most, Mr. Jim Chaboyko. How you doing, my friend?
Great. Yeah. Nice Super Bowl tie-in from football to austere black comedy.
Yeah.
It's not very austere, but anyhow.
From another Scandinavian.
Wearing my football shirt, I realized that I probably need shoulder pads to properly pull this off, but anyhow. No, everything's pretty good.
Very cool, my friend. So you watched the game. You watched the Super Bowl.
I did, yeah.
What did you think?
Half of it, yeah. Good. It was, a lot of people are saying it's a classic. It was kind of marred by a penalty call at the end, but I think the Chiefs would have won anyway. Spoiler alert. It was a pretty solid game. Another year done. So.
Wow. What? Who won?
The Chiefs, Kansas City Chiefs.
Oh, did you say that? And I just wasn't.
No,
I didn't catch the play.
Yeah,
quite literally.
The Abbott Elementary crowd. Abbott Elementary takes place in Philadelphia, and they've made references to the Eagles. So I sort of wonder if this will show up in the at some point in the rest of the season. It's good, entertaining.
Well, there we are. What was I going to ask you before we got into this? Actually, I wasn't going to ask you anything. I was going to say, of course, and folks, we'll put a link somewhere here. We went and caught Pathaan the other night. We put out a short our See It or Skip It spoiler-free review. Again, link above. I did want to comment on that, Jim, to you and to others. As I watched it again, I felt like I was maybe a little dismissive of the director, Mr. Anand's efforts, in the hands of a better director. And I'm like, you know what? I felt I needed to say to you and say to those watching that directing a movie's hard, and it does require skill. And while everything else I said about the film stands, what I really should have said is I think in a different director's hands, it could have been something more. But that he was somehow bad and there's better filmmakers, I think that was a little too pejorative and kind of dismisses his definite demonstrated ability to direct action. Yes, again, all the other stuff I said I think was valid. But anyway, I wanted to say to you, did you have anything else you wanted to revisit? I didn't think you were in any way pejorative or harsh on the flick. But a few days later, you may want to revisit some of your comments.
Well, I think a lot has been made about the the charisma and the career, almost in the way that people talk about Tom Cruise, with the lead
regarding Shah Rukh Khan.
Yeah, Shah Rukh Khan. And we didn't really sort of dwell on that too much. I think other people have done that enough already. One scroll of Twitter will show you that. But but I mean, they're clearly people in their element. And this one wasn't, for me personally. I mean, it was entertaining. I don't regret seeing it, but it's not something I need to see probably again. I don't think.
You know what? For myself, I got to say, Jim, as far as I'm concerned, everything else I said about that film stands. I don't think it's a good movie. I think because its storytelling is weak, like just, again, I just thought I was a little pejorative on the filmmaker. I personalized that. But at the same time, something I did say is, I don't think this is a well-told story. We did compare it to RRR, where I think all of the thematic criticisms I'd have of Pathaan, I also have of RRR. But I'm like, I feel like I was, that would say, hey, it was at least well told. I just think he's not a good filmmaker. I thought that's like, ooh, But that maybe he was a little cynical in his approach here. I think that's a legitimate comment, but you know what? I think we've done a pretty good job of not going, well, that person's not good. And I wanted to walk that back. Not that I received any criticism, but even as I was watching it after I cut it, I'm like, ooh, that's a little much.
Yeah, I didn't take it as
guy
malicious.
does a better job. I would not, if somebody gave me however much money he was given to make that movie, it would not have been as competently made.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I didn't take it as malicious at the time, but I know I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, enough of that. Let's start talking about this flick. And, as we've been doing before, I think I'm doing the same thing, Jim. Let's jump right into the meaning.
Sure, yeah.
And I wanted to ask you this. After you watch this flick, what do you think Ostland wants from us? Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. It's funny. I was I spent the day sort of doing my chores and things and driving around the city and trying to boil down what he was going for here. And I think there's a couple of lines of commentary in this movie, Triangle of Sadness. And I don't know if you would agree with me, so I'm sort of eager to hear your take. I watched it by myself. But I think it has a lot to do with the roles in society. Number one, I think the role of roles is important, as it's established right from the start with the problems that Carl's having with his relationship with Yaya.
Yeah.
And I think sort of underneath that, there's a lot of bullshit about equality. Like everyone's saying, we're equal. We're
equal now.
The fashion show.
So I order you.
Equality, but there's a lot of role reversal in this. It's quite fascinating.
Starting right from the relationship.
Yeah,
You know?
it's interesting that I read one brief thing in the New Yorker said it's a movie about it's a movie about the vomit, but it's also about the shit. And when you think about it, the Dmitri, the Russian, says that I'm a shit seller. I literally sell
Yeah.
fertilizer, and as sort of
That makes
I
the
guess the
world go round.
exactly, and the one that gets the power at the end. I don't know if we've done spoiler alert yet, but
Yeah, we
is
haven't,
what
but yes, that's you know what?
sure
Let's throw that up right now. Folks,
spoilers
We're
alert.
in the spoiler zone. Go for it.
But the title of the person that becomes sort of the mightiest at the very end in the third act is toilet manager. So there's a lot going on there, and shit is mentioned in different ways throughout the movie as well. So that's kind of fascinating. But a lot of role reversal, a lot of
topsy turvy.
yeah, and adaptation too. Like the ones most willing to adapt to the current situation are the most apt to survive, it
Yeah.
seems. But
Well,
there's tons to unpack here.
I'm gonna go back to the. Let me rephrase the question, maybe. What is? How do I put this? What do you think he wants? What Ostland wants us to do now? We've watched the movie. What's the call to action? Or is there?
Yeah, I don't know that there is a specific call to action other than, you know, perception. Everything seems so shaky in this movie. Whether it's literally, whether it's the ability of the ship to remain afloat, or you're in the second act, everyone's literally on a tilt, which is kind of hilarious in its own way. Because of it's a stormy day and they're having the captain's supper. So just the instability really of relationships. I think it's an appreciation of that. And in this particular, things may not change a lot over time, but I think they're open to falling apart or changing or reversing.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Do you think there's a call to action? I was sort of racking my brain thinking, be kind. That seems a little vague.
No, I don't even. You'd mentioned a couple, and I'll pin them because I got them both up on my window now. There were two great New Yorker pieces on this film. And you mentioned the one, and I believe it is by, she says, and the crudity is the point, and it's by Noomi Fry.
Yes.
Noomi
Sorry,
Fry, or Noomi Fry. The other one by Richard Brody, colleague Richard Brody, their colleague Richard Brody. It's Triangle Sadness Reviewed. We're on a yacht and we're puking. And I kind of lean towards that, but I'm wondering if we're going to, if I'm going to get my mind changed, or maybe I'll change your mind. I don't know. I would say, though, and this is, let's say in Women Talking, a film we watched recently, I think there's a call to action there. Sort of men, educate yourselves on what you need to do. Women, if you're in that situation, leave. You're not responsible for the situation. And sorry, we are in the spoiler zone, but I know it wasn't for that movie, and I've kind of given a fair bit of the one of the key, maybe not themes, but messages of the film. Here, though, I think the message is nothing can be done. The class struggle is permanent. I agree with Brody, at least in this film. I think I think the guy's a bit of a misanthrope, or at least that's it's a misanthropic message here. There's there's no point. If it turns around, the toilet manager will become the captain. The hierarchy, whether you're on the boat or on land, the hierarchy remains the same.
Yeah.
And it may be a weird, dark fantasy of seeing the one cleaning up the shit running the show. But it's a rather dark fantasy of that person just becoming the exploiter. You know, I now have control over the resources. Plus, it's like, yeah, that's because it has such Lord in the third part, the third act, it has kind of a Lord of the Flies vibe. And even Lord of the Flies, Jim, I was like, I don't believe this is the way it would play out in any way. In my mind, I could see that crisis. Let's say in this film, for those who don't know, and you're here, you're in the spoiler zone, you're going to find out. Third act, they're on this boat, and then all of a sudden, it's raided by pirates. It obviously sinks because a large explosion happens, and there's only a few survivors, and on a deserted island, and everything reverses. Kind of, but it really is all the same. I think it would be more along the lines of they'd all kind of become quite equal, like really equal, like people do in a crisis. It's more where you see the reinforcement of the old roles is the second they're rescued. And first class kind of goes, oh, thank God we're back to normal. The working class, but I thought we were, I guess we aren't. That I think would have been way more hitting than this kind of weird dark fantasy, which in some sick way, I think, reinforces the status quo. You know, so it's this big satire, and I do think it's a satire, and at times fucking cutting, but it sees it in the end, it ends up at the, that's just the way it is. It's got to be somebody on top, Really?
Yeah.
So
I mean, with the whole Abigail, is the only one with skills apparently. So she catches the fish, the octopi, she starts the fire, she does the cooking, and everyone else is useless because they're influencers or fertilizer salesmen or code writers or things like that.
And at no time do they all go, we could just enslave her because there's 8 of us and...
but I think for the purposes of this, it becomes a little bit like Flowers for Algernon or Awakenings, where for a little bit, the Abigail character sort of reaches some sort of potential. And at the very end, she's almost, and there's a great shot of her kind of looking crazed and holding a rock, and she's about to, pound Yaya's head in with the rock, and she kind of like looks crazed, and it's kind of a great moment, and Yaya says, hey, you could come work for me, be my assistant, and it's like the end of Flowers for Algernon,
you're handy
Cliff
to have
Robertson,
around.
Cliff Robertson gets kind of he starts regressing, or Robert De Niro in Awakening starts regressing, and she can sort of see her potential slipping away again.
That it's now, and that is about the only, you're kind of handy to have around. It's about the only true moment, like where it really rang true to me. There's moments at the beginning, but it's so on the nose that it has such a negative view of all these human beings. There's I want to be a trophy wife. And I'm not saying that there aren't the girlfriend. I'm not saying that there are not people like that. Not at all. But that's not the norm. The way they kind of flip the guy who's aging out of his role, who's making less than, like, he really is coded as a woman, as a gendered woman, making a third of what the other gender would make in the field of he's aging out of his job, and he has to deal with the creeps. Like, I mean, I got to admit, every guy should watch that first scene in the cattle call with the creepy, the gay interviewer, just the creepiest bastard. Every guy should watch it if they even, and then tell me there's no such thing as objectification and, oh, women are overreacting or anything. Watch that fucking scene, and then you go, oh, yeah, we are creeps. Like, so there's some interesting moments, but it's almost like he is punished for his behavior. He is punished as she is, as like they're all like, there's no good person here. They're all awful in their own way. Maybe Woody and Dimitri, the only two, let's say, honest, but even then, it really hates its characters.
Yeah, I mean, and that's not, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I was sort of, I heard things like it's a little bit on the nose, and these kinds of, and I expected actually not to like it. I thought it would be more going after the low-hanging fruit, sort of in an American Beauty kind of way, which is another movie that it didn't really speak to me all that much when I saw it all those years ago. But and I have to say that even though it's so on the nose, there's a great scene where the genteel British arms dealer couple get a grenade thrown at them, and they say, "Oh, I think this is one of ours." And he goes, yes. "Oh, there's no pin in it." And then there's a fabulous shot that I replayed, and it's a long shot of the boat, and all you see is this little kind of, and then a body falls in the water, and it's so, I on the nose, but kind of perfect as well.
It was, and it's one of the highlights for me of this film, Jim.
Yeah. Even that long shot.
There
was
are
just
some great
beautiful
moments. But I'm still like, at the end, it's like, oh, this is a cruel, I think, a satire. And this is, okay, I have two questions, actually. Let me go back to the first one. What is, in your mind, what makes an effective satire?
It's got to be kind of cutting. It's got to have an edge to it.
Bite.
I think. Yeah, and you can't be. I mean, there's the kill your darlings thing, this is sort of, but that's almost a different kind of an argument. But I mean, it's got to have a bite. It's got to have a place to go. It's got to have a point to drive home. And it, sort of a lack of sentimentality kind of works as well. But yeah.
Well, and okay, that going on that, what is the point? Okay, there's no call to action here. I don't think. There's any call to action. What is the point? Like, when you, at the end of this film, what did you think the point he's trying to make is?
Yeah, I mean, I was taking a look at that the whole notion of the roles and what roles do and how they give us structure, how they give society structure. And in this case, I guess I wonder if I'm going to contradict myself. Yeah,
That's
saying
okay.
that
it's a conversation. We're not writing a paper.
Yeah, exactly. So, that they can change on a dime. For instance, if you get attacked by pirates and are starving to death, but things sort of seem to have, as you're saying, revert back.
Yeah.
Right. He meet the new boss, same as the old boss, kind of idea.
Yeah.
And so roles can be handy. They can change, but I think, in the end, does anything really change? In terms of class and that kind of thing, but Yeah.
Well, and that I do. I think it's I think it's misanthropic. Even although Chomsky is quoted regularly, liberally, in this film, even Chomsky thinks that although he doesn't buy into the idea of history as a story of progress, he does think that there is progress happens. Things are getting better, even when it at times, you take a snapshot of human society at any time, and you got to go, whoa, woof.
Yeah.
If we were a movie, it'd be like, oh, what a bummer. At the same time, at times incremental, and at times we backslide, but in general terms, things do seem to get better. Like, I mean, notwithstanding nostalgia for a storied time of yore, do you want to go back 100 years?
Yeah.
With public lynchings, 200, 500. Yeah, the further we go back, the further it's like, would I want to be there? That is not to say that the global poor might go, well, a lot less imperialism, but even for the global poor, it comes with certain, caveats, downsides. I think but is it a good satire? I think based on your criteria, I think so. I think it's even if it doesn't have a call to action, and I may not agree with where he's going with this, I can't say it's not good.
Yeah. I think one of the criticisms is that it's a little on the nose, but again, I enjoyed. Well, I was entertained. Like I thought it was well filmed and well done, and I think.
Well, let's go back to on the nose.
Strange, but yeah.
Let's go back to the on the nose thing for a sec before we move into, it certainly is. It's a big metaphor, right? You got this first class, and then you've got the pretty helpers, and then you've got the deeper into the bowels of the ship, SS capitalism, SS modern world, the browner everyone gets. And the shittier their work gets, at times literally. In times of crisis, blame the brown guy, but I was thinking, even when I thought maybe it is a little on the nose, and I'm like, well, I didn't think Look Up was, or Don't Look Up was.
Yeah. And
I kind of come back to what you had said. It's like, well, sometimes that is the point, to be so obvious. I'm wondering, though, is the metaphor, like, it is a great metaphor, but would that translate beyond the people who are going to watch this movie anyway? Like, you watch this, you didn't stumble. No one's going to, and I really do mean this, hardly anyone's going to see this movie. I think one of the things Brody said, which was, this I think is more the cutting thing to you and I, is not the filmmaker's point about capitalism and exploitation and that, but Brody, and how did he put it? Give me 1 sec, Jim.
Sure,
I want to read this off because it was one of those ones where I'm like, ugh, ooh, that's good.
And Brody's kind of interesting. He seems like a bit of a curmudgeon until I agree with him.
Well, and I totally get that. But here's the quote. Okay, I'll give the whole quote because I think it, just to make sure you got a bit of context. A movie of targeted demagogy, that pitches its facile political stances to the preconceptions of the art house audience. Far from deepening those ideas or challenging those assumptions, it flatters the like-minded viewership while swaggering with the filmmaker's presumption of free-thinking subversive audacity. And here is why I think he's got a big point here. I think it's something that whether you enjoy the film or not, or agree with the film or not, I think he really does understand in a way that the filmmaker is playing to the filmmaker knows its audience. It's going to be that, let's say, petty bourgeois audience, quote, self-aware, while at the same time, and so saying, yeah, but again, and that's what I mean about that, the end, it still says, well, it justifies their place. It's like, you know what, you got every right to feel bad with your affluence and your good fortune and everything. But, it's the way the world works. It's the way humanity works. So, but I think it does flatter its audience, its target audience. Because again, there's no, unlike Women Talking, which I think is, in some ways, if you think about its call to action, its actual message, whereas this message is, well, there's not really any point because, there'll be a captain who's going to control and hand out shit, and it'll just go back to the way it was before. Or Women Talking, where it's, you need to deal with this and you need to do this. And I think that's way more uncomfortable than this person telling its audience, hey, you know what? It sucks and I'm with you. Capitalism is terrible. Anyway.
Yeah.
This is what we got.
Yeah.
See how this is what I think. Yeah, I agree. I see what you're saying about Brody. It's like you curmudgeon until you agree with them. Mind you, that said, and I will have the link. What is their name again? Somebody, I don't even know if how the person's gendered themselves. So Naomi Fry. They don't take that same tack. The crudity, the on-the-noseness is the point, which is, I think, what we felt about Don't Look Up.
Yeah.
Satire's got to be kind of obvious.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it gets too subtle, and then
there's a bit of preaching to the choir, I guess, a little bit of sit back and I'll attack people you don't like anyway. And that's kind of even the first scene, like I was on, they were arguing over the restaurant bill and who's gonna pay it, and that's where the sort of the talking about their role starts, and he says, oh, I thought we could be equal, and even that I sort of didn't like either of them. I'm like, I'm not on either sides. They're playing games with each other, and I just thought, I hope, like, it was a fairly unpromising start until they got onto the boat. I figured, I felt, but
then once you get on the boat, there is that. This is a bit of luxury porn, and and that's what I thought. I thought first scene great. I kind of rolled my eyes through the dinner moment. Like it seemed uncomfortable. Well, not uncomfortably obvious, like a little, okay, so this is that guy, a caricature. I will also say I think Brody made this point, going back to flattering its audience. The best drawn out character, there's only one in the bowels of the ship drawn character, and that person is only well drawn in the third act.
Yeah.
The best drawn characters. And this is where I'm like, I struggle with this, because it feels like, and maybe this is where we Jim, we start talking about story.
Sure.
Is it feels like that it's it's still just a story of, oh, those nasty rich people. And let's look at how the rich live. We don't like them. We think, it certainly seems to, influencers are bad. Like there's certain kind of assumptions built into it. Do you know what I mean? Like, and that seems to be in the end the story. You know, you got
a little dialogue where they sit down with the Russians and what does Yaya do? She's an influencer, and they go, wow, like that's impressive.
Well, except for Dimitri going, oh, so the looks paid for your ticket.
Yeah.
You know,
aren't you going to eat that spaghetti?
Yeah, and like, I mean, it's such an it's low hanging fruit. Oh, look at those millennials, and they're the Gen Z or whatever the marketers have, divvied us up on. Young people with their TikToks and it's like, really? This is what we're doing. They're vapid, although, and apparently the actor, what is his name? Harris
Dickinson, who we've seen in the Kingsman, the Kingsman movie,
Knew it.
and also played David Attenborough in See How They Run.
For crying out loud, that's right. Thank you.
Did you recognize him?
I did not recognize. As soon as you started talking about the Kingsman, it like, yeah. But I did not catch that play.
Did I say David? I meant Richard Attenborough, the actor, not the wilderness guy. But
I do know who you're talking about.
Starting to admire this guy's range. I didn't like him much I didn't think they didn't give him a lot to do in the Kingsman. But
and that was a mess of a flick for a number of reasons.
Absolutely.
Do you think though? Oh, I don't know where I was going with that.
Oh, sorry.
Anna. This shit happens. Yeah. No, I'm done.
The surprise threw us off.
Was this, when you think about this film, when you think about the way it told the story, was there anything you would do differently? Just in the way it told the story.
Yeah. I didn't really have, I guess tonally, you have no, in a way it's sort of like a disaster movie, right? It's set up, you meet all the people, and it's almost like a classic Irwin Allen disaster movie where you meet all the
I can think
couples.
It's Agatha Christie. Who done it? Capitalism.
Out of all the people on this cruise, 8 survivors I counted, and there's 8 people that survived. So everyone, Alicia, the little smiling stewardess as they call her, the Chinese family with a baby, the older folks, that horrible woman that demanded that they clean the dirty sails when it was a ship that didn't have sails. Everyone dies, and there's actually, like Narvik, there's a couple scenes where the bodies are washing ashore with the life jackets on.
Yeah.
I guess we're made to assume that they're all dead, but tonally, to maintain the tone of a black comedy and wipe out 90% of the people on that boat is a real tricky line. I sort of have to, you could have gone 100 different ways with it, but it kind of surprised me in the end. Like, I thought, this doesn't feel like a very deathy movie, but they were killed pretty violently, if not captured, kidnapped. God knows what would have happened to the women, et cetera, et cetera. But it's totally.
Well, I'm assuming that the
kind of weird.
Yeah, I'm assuming that even the pirates bought the biscuit because there was a massive explosion, right? You hear machine gun fire, and then all of a sudden the fucking boat blows up.
Well, there's a couple things that you in the background they have security guys, all the time. And that sort of is a little bit of, the captain's drunk, there's security guys, and there's flies everywhere, even when they're suntanning. And it's almost like one of those details in one of those, 17th century paintings speaking to mortality, where you have a beautiful plate of fruit and there's a couple flies on a cantaloupe,
Yeah.
whatever. And that sort of, and they were you could hear them. Like obviously that was a choice of Ostlund,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
But tonally, it was kind of an odd one. I guess I would have stuck with how he did it. Otherwise, you would have a totally different movie. But it kind of, in retrospect, I was thinking about this, and I thought a lot of people died in this movie off screen, and that's didn't seem to unsettle too many of the survivors. But,
Yeah. Well,
that's just
I now there I suspect that was a storytelling choice. Like it
Yes.
kind of reveals how right to the end, selfish and deluded.
yeah.
You know, you'd mentioned the Swedish woman and her husband
Oh, no.
and that great moment about the sails with the captain where, and I can only assume it's a choice, where she's talking about the sails like a ding dong. Then she asks her husband, well, didn't the boat in the catalog? And he's like, yeah, the boat in the catalog had that. And then she changes it to put the captain in the wrong, just to, because she's unwilling. She's like, you kind of going, wait a second. You've dug yourself in here and now you don't want to, I cannot be wrong. And so I'll change. Well, he says yes. It's like, well, he said yes to your question about, and I really thought that was a nice little moment that just kind of filled out those characters. But in a way, I come back to one of Brody's criticisms, is it's like he is more interested in telling the story of the rich people and the folks directly connected to these super rich people. That's what he's actually interested in. That is the story we're actually getting. You know, it's a moment to look down on these rich assholes.
Yeah, no,
And I know that's a bit of meaning, but I also think that, like, I'm trying to break the heart of the story here, which is really kind of it's why we're starting with the influencer model couple.
Yeah.
You know? We're not starting with a crew member getting on the boat. If we look at other, because this could have been a great upstairs, downstairs story as well, like a satire. But I'm thinking of Gosford Park, which had a bit of satire in it. It's not a satire, but it had some of that bite in it. But I felt like the below stairs people were way better fleshed out. You know, there was a lot less obsessing over the clothing, the opulence of the surroundings of the rich. And at least semi-equal time was spent with was it Emily Watson there smoking in the crappy room she's given as an exploited housemaid.
Yeah. No, I get that. And they do. I mean, they talk about this. Well, you know, it's funny too because they talk about these people until they ditch them or until they're killed, and then you don't hear from them again. You know, and the third act is just what remains. You know, the survivors that remain, which is what, one crew, two crew members. And,
what happens
and 5,
to the? Well, Paula survives. There was the black guy who I don't think he ever got a name. The guy in the engine room.
Yeah, the engine room guy. Yeah.
Who never got a name.
Abigail, Paula, and the engine room guy.
Yeah.
And then there's our couple, the Russian. Did his mistress survive?
Ludmilla,
the Scandinavian guy who just sold all his code, and there was or his business, and I think
Yeah.
there's one other person. But yeah, so it's say 3 crew members and 5 passengers. But
Yeah.
yeah, it sort of just abandons all the other storylines,
Yeah.
including the captain. You know,
Mhm.
the captain who was not given a name either.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's kind of some interesting choices here in any case. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Do you think it was ended well? Like you've got maybe is about to get murdered. By Abigail. You have so maybe is about to get murdered. You have Abigail looking crazed, and then you've got Carl running through the jungle, and who knows who he's going. Why?
yeah, because it's the 2 women he was involved with. He's
Yeah.
he's rushing
Which-
towards.
Which apparently, like, he's the one who's willing to and this is like, I mean, it's an interesting thing to. I think that's something interesting about starting and ending with a shot of him running or on a runway.
Yes, yeah,
You know?
yeah. That was kind of an interesting, like just like whipping through the bushes, and then that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What do you?
I mean, it
what
was
what do
kind
you
of-
think he was story wise? Like, I mean, is that? I don't find it a satisfying ending. Not that I'm owed one,
yeah,
but I'm not even sure it's an ambiguous ending. Like, I'm way more. I find, let's say, the ending of Tenet, or like I'm going to Christopher Nolan, who, you know, a lot of people can, you know, accuse of having, you know, mystery endings or puzzle endings. I'm totally fine with the way he ended Inception. I think that's a great moment, a little hook in the mind. But what's actually going on? I was always the protagonist. Also a nice hook in the mind, but I'm not sure that's what's going on here.
You know what I think would have been more satisfying is just Abigail approaching, with the rock. That, and imagine that as the final shot, like just of her with the, you know, the hair sort of half over her face, and she's raising this rock. That
Yeah,
would have-
especially
I
at
think
that
that would have
moment
had
of
a
where
lot more jam.
gives her, you know, hey, you know,
You can be my assistant.
yeah, and it's like, is that the moment where she, oh, you're really gonna die, or but to give to Carl, like to give the ending to Carl. I mean, he is the way we started. Runway, modeling jungle. Like,
I mean, it's also kind of a, you know, you're basically turning it into a bit of a strange Gilligan's Island, right? Where you know, you have
I thought
7
that
people,
early. Yeah,
two crew members and 5 passengers,
Yeah.
and you know, they're stranded on. Who gets stranded on islands anyway? I mean, you could call the whole thing into question. Even the fact that, oh, look, there was a resort on the back end of this island, we just didn't look, you know, and nobody went looking for them apparently, and I mean, it was shot in Greece, I think. Because of the trader that comes and talks to it's the woman who's the stroke victim. That's the one who's the 5th passenger there. So you know, there's sort of an African trainer. I sort of wonder if they're supposed to be in the Indian Ocean or sort of on the other side. But no, it's you could have cut it a little bit differently. At that point, did we really care about Carl as much, you know? But
and this is actually, do we care about any of them? Like at the end, if Abigail smashes Yaya's brains in, are we actually going, oh, what a tragedy? That's awful. Like it's weird actually, because this is a moment where we should feel, but kind of like what you're saying about all the violence. You know, seen and unseen, seen and implied. Maybe part of the, I don't know, is it the strength of it, or is it by the end of it you just don't care?
You know, I
Because like
think
none of these, you don't get attached to any of these characters. Now, go back to Don't Look Up. You feel for these characters. They all have a real arc. Nobody has a fucking arc in this. They stay the same throughout. Like, who changes?
yeah, I'm just trying to I'm wondering if Carl, because he's willing to sort of, sell himself out to Abigail. I don't know. Would he have done that before? Yeah, and I don't know if it's character things, but they were all of a sudden forced to like kill animals. That was a horrible scene with the donkey, by the way. But
Yeah.
they were called on to do certain things. I don't know ultimately if that's just a one-off or it's a
But
3-week vacation in the wild.
Yeah, but it's
or
that
if it
part
would
of
have
a
actually-
character arc.
Yeah,
Was that a
if that
moment
would
where
have
you go,
actually-
wow, they've developed?
they
Or did you
changed
go,
or something,
well,
yeah.
they killed a donkey in
yeah.
I mean, now that isn't to say that, maybe in a satire you don't need character development. You can't say, I'm thinking, well, though Animal Farm was more of a straightforward allegory. Was it satirical, or was it really just trying to boil down and simplify? This is how he felt, the common turn, thinking of Orwell's experiences with the Russian communists in Spain, Republican Spain, and the way he read it into what was going on in Stalinist Russia. So there's no arc, there's no change. That's not what we're doing here.
Yeah,
And
I
maybe
would-
that's kind of part of what's going on here is it's more allegorical than it is. Does that make sense? Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, I would maybe say that Abigail's character undergoes quite a bit of change. She's, like a character that's like in Awakening, she's, she's gone from one sort of extreme toilet manager to sort of, I am the captain now, to quote
Yeah.
Captain Phillips.
but is that
and
actually
that-
a character change, or is it the circumstances changed? Like, I don't think she changed. I don't think it was like she was such a sweetheart beforehand and then became now I will. I think that's the point of all these things is there is no change to these characters. They are flat.
Yeah.
Would
she have approached with the Rock at the end, all things being equal and nothing having been changed, once she got a taste of this, not freedom but power, I guess?
Yeah. But
Would
it's
that have changed? Like, will that corrupt her going forward?
Yeah.
Right. Now that she's experienced that, she has to relinquish it, which is, I think, what she was like. Screw this.
Oh, well, like all capitalists, it's like, I will kill to maintain my status in the hierarchy, in my place.
Yeah.
Something Dimitri says, and she is just acting out. But and that may be going back to like one of the themes and one of the messages of this. But was it a good end to the story? Like, I agree with you. Ditch the running in the jungle, and just end on Abigail's moment of about to bash Yaya's brains in. And then there you go. There you got an ending. That was that. Notwithstanding Ms. Katie Fowler, speaking of which, good to see you in the chat there.
Oh, hey guys.
And let's not forget
JD.
her and her husband, Richard L. They were in, Jim, they were in Nevada when they came, when they were checking out the live stream, even on their travels.
Yes.
They were coming in, and I didn't catch that play. I thought they were back home from their adventures, and they were not.
And they still came
I
out.
think.
That was.
Sorry about that, playing with the right buttons. Anyway, the important thing here.
I think she mentioned what town they were in. I can't remember the name of it. It was very small. I ended up looking it up on Google or something.
Big thing is Katie Fowler and Richard L. deserve. Whoops. That's what they deserve. That's some loyal chatting.
Pretty impressive. Yes.
But oh, and we got somebody else. Actually, maybe it's a moment to acknowledge the folks in the chat. We've got Jelly Duck 100. It looks like the plugin I was using to put chat on is no longer working, so I'll have to figure out another way to do that. But also, we've got DMG. So let's give a big air horn for everybody. Anyway, great to see everybody here. And Katie, notwithstanding my smartass remark, you're thinking about Avengers Infinity War, not Endgame, because Endgame actually had a resolution. I've always complained about the end of Infinity War because it was the no stakes ending to a movie. Any of the people who died in there except one character, it was like, well, we know they're going to come back. Like, this is not a tragic ending. It's a bummer for them, but me, audience member, I'm like going, well, they've already announced the new Spider-Man movie. The kid's coming back, you know. Anyway, yes, Richard L's chimed in. The fans of the show we are. That deserves. Gotta love the air horn. Anyway, Jim, why don't we? We have been going for an hour, so I think it is time to sort of not quite wrap up, but maybe let's have a quick chat about craft. Sure. Is there anything you want to note in it? We have mentioned a couple of beautiful shots, but what else would you add to that?
You know, I sort of liked how ultimately I think I liked this movie more than you did. Maybe not by tons, but I quite enjoyed myself through this.
But craft.
Craft, yeah.
Craft.
So, but I was going to mention the director.
Yet. We're not in see it or skip it.
I was going to mention some of the direction points. Is that there's a nice use of sound effects. There's the animal braying, which turns out to be the donkey that everyone's afraid of. When it came down time to settle down for the night. Baby crying in the dining room, all kinds of little touches. There's a scene where people are talking and there's a light beacon going off on a life jacket. Oops. All kinds of little touches that I quite liked, that I guess Ostland had put in there. But I have to say that the death of Charlby Dean is just what a I think she's really leaps out, and not just because she's obviously beautiful, but I think she's got a real knack. She really, your eyes really gravitate to her when she's on the screen. There's a scene, that first bit when they're fighting, and then she finally comes back and they're making up, and I actually think she gives more soul to the character than the character deserved. Like there's and they sort of have this makeup conversation that's kind of charming, and after all the arguing about the restaurant bill, and I think she really, I would like to have, I mean, it's obviously a shame she died way too young. It's just crazy, but yeah, I would like to have seen her in other things, and I know she does have other work out there, but. I quite enjoyed her performance in this, not a super likable character, but I think she added a little bit of shading to what should have been a shallow character.
Yeah. Well, and is that is it? Of course it's a testament to her. Is it also was Ostland trying to do that as well? Try to give a little bit more, or it's a tough call.
Yeah.
we had mentioned this before, but I think it bears repeating. Yes, it's beautifully shot, and not in that dark, moody, washed out. We get to see color here. We get to see, some saturation. And there are some great moments where you're like, as they're swimming around in their own filth, in their own shit, where you're like, which I think is great. It really, and it did remind me, there was one great scene where the woman is thrown up in the bidet as you see her crap in her pants. And it did remind me of One Horrible Night when I was in Egypt on a cruise. Like, hey, I know exactly how that feels. I was, I was like, wow, that feels exactly how I felt. That's exactly well, not exactly. I didn't have a bidet. I had to blah and then sit and then blah and sit. It was awful. Wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy.
Yeah, that was the character Vera, played by Sunny Melez. I'm pretty sure I'm mispronouncing that.
I think. Yeah.
But there's another scene where she's just literally rolling on the slippery floor for what seems to be forever, and it's horrible and gross, and I could not stop laughing. Like just how cruel that whole kind of that segment was. It's not as you're saying, it's not an up with people kind of movie.
Yeah, no. Well, the moment the British couple, the arms dealers, we stuck together. The personal explosive device, that really cut 25% into our profits about landmines.
Yes, yeah. We helped restore democracy.
The only death we kind of see that's like that was I think that was great comedy, that long shot, and that was my biggest laugh out loud moment where is this one of ours?
Where's the pin?
And then we come to the long shot, because comedy is in long shot, tragedy in long shot. The heart of comedy, and I was like, boy, this guy knows it. There I felt like I was in good hands.
So cheeky, like such a cheeky shot.
And they were so awful.
Yeah.
And even been supporting democracies all over the world. And then they get, and it's kind of obvious, but it's dealt with so subtly, so quickly, and it right at the end of the second act, as you move into the third, and so you don't even get it's not, he was blown up by his own, Katie referring to the Avengers, what is one of the moments handled a lot heavier and a lot more obvious, although it is an important story point, which is in the first Iron Man, where he's literally blown up by his own armaments getting into the wrong hands. Yeah. Whereas this film, I think, at least seems to acknowledge it's like, well, that's what happens when you sell arms. Some's going to get around. It will not always be for the democracies being supported all over the world.
Yeah.
Jim.
There's one other little craft thing. There's a character, and I'm just looking up, Therese, played by Iris Bourbon, and she's only got one functioning arm. She's in a wheelchair.
Yes.
For most of the movie.
And she can say one German line. What was it?
She can say one thing, and man, she was great. Like you could tell she didn't need to say other words. She acted alarmed when she saw somebody fall down or whatever, but she's literally got one line and one limb, and the rest don't work, and she manages to be rescued. And I thought that was a very well done part of it, I think. Kind of a thankless role, but she made the most of it, absolutely.
Yeah. DMG in the comments is saying, happy Super Sunday. Happy Super Bowl. Happy Super Bowl.
CFL.
Happy Super Bowl. Here, 1 second here.
And now they're going to be
Happy
talking about the
Super
draft.
Bowl Sunday.
I'll get used to all the buttons. All right, Jim, before we get into our wrap up, why don't you tell us, Jim, why don't you tell us about what we're watching next week?
Well, I believe I sort of snuck a look at our thing because I couldn't remember, but evidently we're watching the Banshees of Inisherin for next week. Yeah, just in time for, well, a few weeks before Oscars, but a worthy selection.
Yeah, we are, folks, zeroing in on watching 9 of the 10 films. I think if we could do that, 9 of the 10 films, Best Picture winners, because I think we both agree we have zero interest in watching Elvis. Although who knows, maybe we'll be able to wedge that one in as well. Yeah. Oh, okay. I gotta do this.
Elvis.
I'm also gonna.
Sunday, Sunday, Sunday.
Okay. One more thing to announce for that. Jim and I are going to start to experiment and maybe do this every second film where we record live to tape and then publish it. We have been having a hard time starting on time. We keep going later and later into a Sunday. And we have discovered that perhaps we can benefit from a little editing. So next week's show...
What? Sorry.
No. That's absolutely fine. Where are we here? So, folks, yes, next week, while Jim and I will record it next weekend, it won't be, if I can get it out Sunday, I will, but probably won't come out till Monday morning. So keep that in mind. This is not, we are going to miss our super awesome chat, which is why we're only going to do it every second week. We're going to try and find that balance. But yeah, some of it is like, can we deliver a better show for you guys, and not expect everyone to show up late at night, late on a work night, which,
yes,
again, we just keep going later and later. So, let's get into, you know what, Jim, time to get into oh no, you know what, before we do final thoughts, let me ask you this, Mr. Chaboyko. The triangle of sadness. See it or skip it?
Like I said, I enjoyed it. I'd say see it. See women talking first, but
you know what? I'm going to ask this again.
Sure.
Not about women talking.
Sure.
I'm going to say, Jim, I
have to qualify everything.
The triangle of sadness. See it or skip it?
See it.
Great. Myself, I struggle, but it's I'm going to lean on the side of see it. Come to your own conclusions. I did not like the message in this film, but I didn't disagree with everything either. Like, I'm really on the line. Yeah, so see it. A qualified see it. Mm-hmm. A hedged see it. All right.
Sure.
I'm saying see it. Barely. All right. Another question. Although I think we've answered it. We had question marks at the beginning. I'm going to say this is a class-conscious film and give it that mark.
Okay.
But I think that deserves heavy qualification. It's a member of the bourgeoisie's understanding of class. Like it is a regressive approach. Like he's very well aware of capitalism. It is, I think, in many ways an allegory of capitalism and an allegory of class and exploitation and everything. But this view of class assumes that the class structure will remain, that once someone gets on top, they will stay on top. The second they have an opportunity to change that power dynamic, they'll just reverse it. Like, I don't actually think he sees any hope for the working class. Maybe a better deal. Be an assistant instead of a toilet manager, but that the power structure remains. So it is, it's kind of a hedge bet. So I'll give it because I've given other stuff that I don't think is so clear, that mark, but it's the bourgeoisie's idea of the class struggle, it's not a real working class perspective, but it is conscious of class. So
yeah,
does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. What's interesting, and this is more in terms of the ethnic aspect of it. This is coming out on Amazon Prime in the Philippines later in March. And the poster of it features Abigail very heavily when she's really just sort of in the third act.
Yeah.
So not so much a class comment, but it's interesting how they're marketing it to different. There's a lot of Filipino crewmates on board.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to see how they market it from country to country. I might have texted you retweeted that to you earlier. But,
I did see one of the things I saw is I was trying to figure out if this was a union-made film. I did find a news story about film workers in the Philippines, and she, the woman, what is her name again?
Dolly De Leon?
Thank you. She is quoted as talking about, because they were interviewing people who've worked on big money foreign productions, and how they hope that some of the ideas come to the Philippines, instead of ridiculous long-hour days. And there she is quoted as saying when she was on this flick, they were doing 8-hour days. Does that mean that was a union-mandated 8-hour day? It could be a government-mandated thing, or it could have been just the director going, my creativity's shot. Because I also found quotes of 27 takes. Like he had it was a long shoot, 70 days. I mean, not as long as a big action film, but when you're really thinking about, there's a lot of practical effects going on here, but it's not The Matrix. It's not a big special effects, big ass wide. Wow, it's all smaller, tighter spaces. So I'm wondering if it's like, and maybe that's why it was 70 days. They're like, no, we're doing 8-hour days. I'm going to be grinding these people hard enough. I don't want them to mutiny when I'm getting their 27th take after 12 hours.
Well, it's also what they say is in movies, don't work with children, animals, or on the sea. So that's, they basically say those things are all just complicate things immensely. So
yeah. All right, Jim, what are your final thoughts?
Final thoughts. If you're gonna watch the movie, if you haven't already, just keep your eyes open for the subtleties. There's a lot of humor in this. There's a line at the end. What are you doing with your hand? Which one? The guy says, and he's sort of rubbing, his new girlfriend's lap or what have you. Just a lot of little grace notes. It's quite well shot, and just even the jittery silverware on the table when during the captain's dinner. Just little bits. Look out for the little bits. Pay attention, and it'll reward you, I think.
Yeah. Myself, Jim, I'm there is a part of me, and let's beg for a like and subscribe one more time. There is a part of me that's thinking this will reward repeat viewing, and I could totally see like the it's custom made for a Marxist reading, an over the top. Oh my God, you're boring me now. Can we just watch the movie? Marxist reading. I'm gonna struggle with this one for a while. You know what? And we've watched some great films where I'm like, this is like, especially on the issue of class, where I'm like, you've got Coda, which, I cannot recommend that film enough. On the other side, where it's like Nomadland, I just can't. This is like, God damn, it's on a teeter where I'm like, is it? Isn't it? It says some things I agree with. At the same time, I'm like, there's something ugly going on here, but I don't necessarily think it's the filmmaker is being ugly. I think he does have some misanthropic ideas about human beings. I don't know. Yeah. I struggle with this one, and he asked me the same question next week. I might go, I can't recommend this to others.
Yeah.
But
your mind changes.
It also makes me think I should rewatch Nomadland. Maybe I'll have a different take on it. Everyone, thank you all so much for coming. DMG, let's give them all. Let's give everyone included DMG, Richard L, Katie Fowler, Jelly Duck who popped in earlier.
Yeah,
that's a big round of applause. And of course, Jim, another great show. What can I say? Be sure you like and subscribe and do all that great stuff. Say goodnight, Jim.
Good night, Jim.
Good night, everybody.
Never gets old.